We have a 2017 Volkswagen Jetta. I don't know the engine size yet, but customer's concern is it has a ESC light on, and they said something along the lines of it lacks power above 3,000 RPMs or something like that. I have not driven the car. We're going to scan it and see what trouble codes we have.
And we'll scan it and see what trouble codes we got. Okay, camshaft position sensor, signal too high. Well, let's just slap a cam sensor in it. Maybe not. Maybe that would fix it. I want to point out that this does say signal too high. That probably means that this is not a correlation problem or an implausible problem. That means it's not a timing chain jumped. It's not a situation where the variable cam timing system isn't working. But sometimes on cars, it triggers codes like this when that is the case, so we want to be sure. So we're going to have to do some tests, and normally it's not a good idea to clear trouble codes and see if things reoccur, especially when it's a fuel trim problem or a misfire. I don't think that applies in this situation, so we're going to clear this and see if it reoccurs. It says no fault code found, but let's go back in, make sure it doesn't reoccur, and it did reoccur immediately. So let's get under the hood and take a look at what type of system it has.
Okay, so what do we have here? We have I think that's a 1.4 liter CZT, and 1.4 liters, a little turbo guy. It does have a cam solenoid here, so it has variable valve timing on the exhaust side, and a cam solenoid here, so it has variable valve timing on the intake side. And so it would probably have a cam sensor on both those banks. So I see there's a cam sensor right there. And there might be one in a corresponding location back there, but it's hard to see. So I'm going to pull this tube out and I'll get right back with you. Okay, so there's a cam sensor. You may not be able to tell in the video, but that looks new. And then underneath there, that looks like another new one. So somebody has been in here and replaced some cam sensors. Does that mean that this may be a variable valve timing problem or a timing chain? I believe this would be a belt with the type of timing cover it have on it, or a timing belt jumped problem. I just don't know. What's the first thing you do when you are concerned with a variable valve timing problem? You check the oil, that's what you do. If anything, maybe a little bit high, but definitely not the problem. Obviously the code reoccurs immediately, and that could mean that the timing chain or timing belt has jumped and the computer sees it out of time immediately. But also it could mean that one of the cam sensors just isn't putting out a signal, and so I think we really need to know that. With the way the car runs, it runs reasonably okay. I didn't drive the car, but I did drive it in, and it doesn't seem like it's out of time. It would run worse than this if it was out of time. So I'm thinking along the lines of a sensor that's not outputting. To follow the normal diagnostic process, we'd want to look at data groups right after checking trouble codes before we do anything else. So let's go ahead and do that.
Okay, so back into VAGCOM in order to look at the camshaft parameters on the data groups. This is a UDS car, so there ain't going to be measuring blocks or data groups, but we can look at advanced measuring block values, and that's off your screen. But we're going to search for cam here, and we can have cam adjustment specified on bank exhaust, cam adjustment actual on exhaust, cam adjustment intake specified, cam adjustment intake actual. And I'll get this out of the way. Now both of these are reasonably close, So I would assume that this is, since these two match, that's probably normal. I don't know what normal readings are on those, but those two almost match. They're off about 0.8 volt, 0.8 degrees. So I can't really call that a problem either. Maybe driving it and graphing these and making sure they stay really, really close during a drive would be the thing to do. But I think I'm just going to go straight to putting an oscilloscope on the sensors. Let's go do that now. We have the picoscope hooked up to the laptop. We're going to hook our ground up. And when you're using a meter or something that's measuring voltage or an oscilloscope, you want to check that it's actually working. So touch it. See your touch your positive. You should be able to see the 12 volts. It's going over range, so I'm going to change the range to 20 volts. And then I touch it, and I see it go up to 12. Touch it, see it go up to 12. Okay, so we have a 3-wire sensor, so we're going to check power, ground, and signal return. Lots of times the power is a 5-volt reference. So come down here. And so we may not be able to read that real well, but it's definitely 5 volts. I'm going to disconnect. That's back down to 0 volts, and then I'm going to reconnect. And we have 5 volts. So then we're going to check our ground. So we go into that wire there. And that was very strange. It went up to 5 volts as well. I'm going to disconnect, drop to 0, and then I push it back in, and it's got 5 volts. That's 5 volts on the ground. That probably means we have a bad ground. But let's see what our signal return wire does. And over there we have 5 volts. Oh, just for a moment there, maybe not. Maybe I wiggled the connector. Anyway, it's got 5 volts on the signal return. That should be a square wave pattern, or skyscrapers, as we sometimes say. That's me releasing it. That's not anything. I'm going to release all the way, and it drops back down to 0, and push it back in, and it has 5 volts. Folks, if you shotgun a sensor on this car, it ain't going to fix it because the ground is no good for the sensor. Okay? Now, let's do the back sensor just so we have a known good. Okay, so we're going to check the power. Over there. And you can see there it's up at 5 volts for the power. And then we're going to check the ground. And if you go over there, you can see the ground is at 0 volts. And then we're going to check the signal return. And there we have our square wave pattern, or series of skyscrapers there. So, if you really wanted to, you could swap the sensors to see if it changed anything. But we have a very obvious case of a bad ground or a wire broken on the ground wire on that front sensor. So how can we confirm whether this works or not? Here's a quick check we can do. We're going to back probe the back sensor to get the good ground, then we're going to back probe the front sensor, and then we're going to connect the grounds together in order to give the front sensor a good ground. Possibly just jumpering this to the body of the engine would be okay, but no need to do that when we have a good ground right here. So now that we have a good ground,
I'm going to touch this. We should see 0 volts on it. Let me go over to the...
And you can see there on the oscilloscope it's 0 volts.
And now we're going to back probe it. Now you need to be careful not to short the two T-pins together, or the back probes together.
And that proves that our ground is the problem. The sensor is working.
I'm going to just pull this alligator clip off our ground in order to see what happens with our skyscrapers. Now go over there.
And when I pull off, it affected the way the engine ran, and our signal went to flatline 5 volts.
So once again, if you shotgun a sensor on this car, as somebody did, they shotgunned both sensors on the car. They both look new. It would not fix this car. A couple of quick checks. You probably could have checked that ground with a multimeter and figured out that it had no ground. You could not have checked the signal return accurately without an oscilloscope, but you certainly could have found the ground problem with a voltmeter. Since the two wires are right there together, most likely those grounds are supposed to be connected in the harness, and they're probably broken at where they connect. We're going to take some of that harness apart right there and see if we can find a problem. Okay, we have opened up the harness expecting to find a broken wire, but we've gone as far as we can go. We did accidentally cut a wire right here. Coincidentally, it is the wire in question, but that isn't our problem. We cut that as we were taking this apart. Not a big deal. Sometimes it happens as you cut open a harness. We have to cut it open even though we saw no damage. But we didn't do the best of job, because now that we haven't found the problem there, we started looking further, and what we eventually saw was a brand new AC hose right there. And as I look at that AC hose, it looks brand new, and you would wonder, why would an AC hose get replaced? And the reason it might get replaced is because it rubbed the fan. And I think that's what happened here, is that AC hose rubbed the fan. But why would it rub the fan? Well, that belly pan down there looks new too. And then as we looked over here, I've already cut this off here, but I noticed there were some zip strips that aren't factory that I cut off looking. So I already took those tie straps off here and pulled this out, noticing new tape across here. But whoever did this repair didn't look close enough, because right there's a bunch of exposed wires. Most likely that's our problem right there, and they rubbed against the fan. Was this car wrecked in the front? I don't know. It don't really look like it, but here we have cam sensor related trouble code, wiring harness damaged right here. I wish I'd have done a better visual inspection, but we're definitely going to have to pull that apart, maybe cut some of them and wrap some heat shrink around them. Maybe we can tape some of them up, but almost for sure that wire right there is broken down there. And I wanted to show in the wiring diagram, the two sensors show the grounds connected together. It would have been nice if they had connected them together very near the sensors themselves. That would have made a shorter wire, but somewhere beyond that splice, they're obviously connected together somewhere beyond our fan rub spot. Okay, you can see then as we're opening up this harness, you can see right there, there's our black wire completely broken. So keep your harnesses away from your fan. With some stuff apart and out of here, it's going to give us some access in order to repair these wires. Okay, Bob repaired those wires, and we had to cut several of them and splice them back together. One of them we just wrapped a little bit of tape around because it was just a minor scuff to the outside of it. But he has plugged it in and verified that the code didn't reoccur already. We'll probably put the scope on it, make sure that sensor is outputting a signal. The problem was that the ground wire was broken, providing no ground to the sensor, and so the sensor would not output a waveform. It would just be stuck high, just as the trouble code said. Sensor stuck high. So He did clear the code and verify that the trouble code didn't reoccur. We'll at least put the scope on it and verify. We still have to tape up some wires, put them back in the factory location, tape those back up right there. This should be a good fix. Bob just finished up the wiring harness on this. Make sure he did a good job on it. Is that a greasy fingerprint? How'd that happen? So all our harness under there, down there, down there. I was really wanting to put a scope on this and show the signal coming out of it. He already told me that the code didn't reoccur. He cleared it and then pulled it out here, but the code didn't reoccur. I'll go drive it. Okay, I've finished the road test on this Jetta, and the ESP light is no longer on, nor is the check engine light. It has an announcement for an oil change reminder, I guess. I'm not going to bother to scan it. Bob already confirmed that the code didn't reoccur, and we're very confident in our fix. Okay, so this was a rather interesting diagnosis for me. It just proves the point that you can't see a trouble code and throw parts at it. Now, the customer didn't tell me that they had had an incident and had the fans rubbing into stuff. They didn't tell me that at all until I asked them about it, and they said, yeah, it was stuck in the ditch and we had some of that stuff repaired. So it would have been nice to know that. That might have keyed us in a little bit faster, although this diagnosis didn't take us long at all. Getting out an oscilloscope doesn't take too long, but we could have done it with a voltmeter also. So when you have a 3-wire sensor and before you go changing the sensor, check power, check ground, and check the signal return. You can't really check a signal return on a sensor like this with a voltmeter. It's not really an adequate way. Our ground wire for that sensor was broken before the junction to the other sensor ground wire. So that's what made that sensor not output a signal, but the other sensor worked. So if you learn anything from this video, be sure and click the like button. And if you want to donate to the continued production of these videos, find the donate icon on my website at www.kansascitytdi.com. And if you also want to buy something through the Amazon link in the description, that might help this channel. And if you want to watch some more of my videos, there'll be one right there and one right there. And don't forget to subscribe right there. Thanks for watching.